I want to say, how's everybody doing today? Today is another installment of Core Values, and we have the deep pleasure of having Randall Gillespie on today. And I have started really looking into what he's done so far and his ideologies, and he is just such a fascinating man. And Randall, if you could kind of introduce yourself to the audience, just kind of what you do and who and what validates you.
That's a tough one. How much time you got? Um, yeah, Randall Gillespie. I was Army infantry starting in 2003. Um, getting a pretty bad echo on my end.
Yeah. Are we good to go on audio? Are we echoing?
Randall's fired.
Yeah.
Just blame Randall.
It's all good. All right. Roger that. Continue.
Yeah. So just did Army infantry and went to Army Civil Affairs. Been stationed in Germany, multiple deployments, Iraq, Afghanistan. And I guess the latest thing I do now is the Gruntproof outdoor testing, gear testing, and adventures, all kinds of stuff in the woods. I didn't have a bio prepared, so I don't know. It's pretty bad one there.
So, what I have seen just with your videos on YouTube, the Randall Actual channel, it was that correct? What was the name of your channel?
Well, yeah, I had the two. The main one is Gruntproof, the
Okay.
outdoor stuff. Randall Actual is kind of like it's still up. People can go watch stuff on there, but that's a little more just the personal uh army stories and some more rants, more of the political stuff. So I have kind of two identities on there.
And well, I'm not gonna lie to you. I got introduced to the Randall Actual side first before the Gruntproof,
Okay.
and that's really just kind of what drew me in was just the way that you would just speak on your perspective of mic check, mic check. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, you can hear me. So let me just apologize. We have gone to our tertiary avenue, and this is what we've come up with. So in this, I want to say thank you, Randall, for staying persistent through this whole endeavor.
It's all good, man.
But I really wanted to highlight what really drew me into you. And the biggest thing was just your opinion about a lot of what was going wrong with the roots of what made us the greatest nation to ever live.
Okay. Yeah, so now I understand how you got onto that from the Randall Actual stuff. Okay, yeah, because that's where I was usually doing a lot of that. Yeah, like I always paid attention to things and society and all that. And they didn't really teach civics and stuff for my generation. I don't even know what I am. I was born in 83, so not a millennial, but one of the crappy generations that everybody hates. So serving and everything, I had to go back and learn the Constitution and everything later, like using the GI Bill for college and being interested in it and just paying attention to how the country's been in my lifetime. This all this tribalism and all the political um, tension, turmoil we're having. It doesn't seem new. It just seems like it's worse and more prevalent because of the internet and everything. But yeah, so I've just been paying attention to it and more time on my hands looking at things. It's kind of like what do we do? Everybody's fighting and just going at it. Everybody thinks they're right. So I don't know. I living overseas for a while. I think I got lucky having an outside perception. So it's like, well, I guess I used to kind of be liberal like or left like, and then kind of you get older and you always tend to go be a little more conservative than your younger self or the younger generation. It's kind of natural. But still being on the outside, I like these days we have the Karens. So I'd look at the people on the right yelling at the Karens on the left, and I'd be like, well, we have Karens on the right too. And so I don't know. The whole point is, just looking at everything and how the country's going. There's a lot. I don't know. I just for that channel for the Randall Actual stuff, I just started trying to look at the Constitution and figure out where we've been going wrong for a long time, not just the last couple decades. And yeah, trying to put my 2 cents into it. Yeah, kind of having fun with that part of it. I'm glad somebody pays attention to that channel though. Nobody's really asked me about that yet.
Well, it's because I got fascinated with the origins of what made everything work. Like you have the Constitution, which is from after my knowledge of learning from multiple people, it's a living document, but you had a whole room full of the smartest men in the world or in the nation at that time making a decision as a committee. And they got a lot of stuff right with the base of what or the foundation of what freedom was and what your rights were. And I think with all of our, we're adding 2 cents here, adding 2 cents there, it got to a point where it kind of got manipulated into whatever you wanted it to be. And people have taken that and kind of put people in boxes because of that. They have taken over the authority over these people because they know more about what they can manipulate to work for them than what the actual rights are. And that's why we fly the civil peace flag, is because in the early 1800s, late 1700s, there was ships coming into port, and if you had the war blood flag of America, which is a flag that we know of, it showed that you were under government jurisdiction. And the civil flag was created for ships that came into port to identify under the civilian jurisdiction. And there was a delineation between the two. But what happened was the Coast Guard ended up taking over the flag, putting their emblem where the stars are, and that's the Coast Guard flag. And it kind of got individualized in that sense. So what we wanted to do is just start going back to the basics of the Constitution. Like, show people what their rights are, what they're allowed to fight for, because people are just going into this fight blind. They have no clue what they really can fight for or how they should do it. They don't have an avenue. They don't have the proper education. They don't have the proper sources. And they don't, I think the biggest part about it is they don't have any leadership. Like, we have people that are trying to divide everyone, as opposed to just go back to the Constitution, which was for everyone. The Constitution wasn't for specific people. It was to incorporate every citizen of America. And, you know, being able to adjust and get back to incorporating everyone is trying to divide everyone into their own little factions is what's been missing. I mean, we need to get back to the Constitution that incorporates everyone. Obviously, you have the 3/5 issue, and there's amendments to, kind of fix the little parts that needed to get fixed. But overall, it was an all-encompassing document.
Yeah, if I could say something, I learned about the 3/5ths rule with the slaves. You know, that sounds terrible, up front, but I just learned recently, I wish I could cite the source, but, that was not just to discredit, or I guess in some cases it could be, but it wasn't to not count a complete vote of a slave. It was actually to stop slave owners from just trying to get more power through more votes by owning more people. That's like something interesting that you like I always would hear that, like I said, face value and be like, man, that's terrible. Somebody would only count for that much of an actual vote. And then people should Google that for real. Like I'm definitely not a constitutionalist, not an expert in it at all. Actually, people think it's cigarettes, but I always carry this with me just because I do like to pull it out and read it instead of Googling stuff on my smartphone. But that's definitely like one of those points to look up that you'll hear. Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, so just stuff like that. Like I don't think that's in the like I've been trying to get deeper. Hang on a second. I've been trying to get deeper into reading all that, like especially the Federalist Papers. Like I've got a whole book on them, all 85 of the freaking essays written, and it's all pretty tough reads, but it's to understand the Constitution, you kind of should understand what they were thinking and their like all their thought patterns behind it all. And it's I think it's really a shame that we don't teach civics anymore. Like my dad would always talk about that. We had history and social studies, and then in college you'd have your government classes, and you would briefly touch on that stuff as like the charters of freedom, but there was no specific class, and then I was a dumb selfish kid, I never thought about it, but once I got stationed in Germany, I'd be out with Germans. They would know more about our process and our representation, everything. They would know way more about it than we did because they would go hardcore into it. And they would be like, "Dude, you're in your army and you don't know this stuff? Like, why'd you raise your hand? What are you fighting for?" And I'm like, "I don't know, America." So it's like I don't know. I think the loss of civics definitely put us off course because you that was what 250 almost 300 years ago. That was a long time ago. So we cannot fathom what anything was like back then. We have no idea. So the only way that was passed on through the generations would be to read and study the stuff and have an expert interpreting it for us. So, yeah, just like in the last couple years, I started listening to all these lecturers about it, and they would get me into the Federalist Papers. Like, yeah, you got to go read that stuff, because you can. It's like in the military, you can interpret a regulation or a policy in the military. Like leaders can misinterpret that stuff and do whatever they want with it because the lower enlisted guys are going to follow those orders, period.
Mhm.
And officers can definitely misinterpret those, but if you actually know those regulations and you know why they were created and the policies and why they were written, you can actually kind of figure stuff out, like why you have that. It's like a stupid example of in the army, you can't smoke within like 50 feet of a building. And we were in Germany around stone buildings and we're like, that's retarded. Why is that a rule? And then, we would be by a shack in Kuwait or Iraq or something, and the ashtray can would fill up with butts and trash and everything. Guys keep throwing lit cigarettes in there. Next thing you know, this wooden shack's on fire. So we're like, oh, that's why somebody a long time ago started burning army buildings down like that and killing people. And now we have a policy that you have to smoke far away from the building in case the butt can catches on fire. So that's the point. It's like you got the rule, hey, you got to go over there to smoke. That's the rule. People just listen to it, roger that, sir, and move on. But it's kind of like with understanding our history and our rights and everything, like you said, it's kind of important to understand like why we have all the stuff and what they were all thinking. It's like I don't know. I'm still really trying to get smart on it all. I don't think I'll ever be good enough. It's pretty tough stuff. And it's like those guys were geniuses back then. Like I read their stuff and it's like these dudes were smart, man. They were advanced.
It, um, good on time.
Yeah, I hear you.
Um, the biggest thing is they did things communally, and they always bounced ideas off each other. And now we get to a point where people want to take their ideas and hold it to themselves or their group, and the ideas kind of get tailored to that group. And it's not, I just, where can people find information? It's such, there's a lot of misinformation and misdirection, actually. Where could we kind of help spotlight the stuff that actually matters and that's actual fact?
Like about the Constitution or like
Yes.
our media and
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the Constitution is that's pretty much been the same, just besides the last couple ratifications. But there's that in the Federalist Papers. That's I don't know. That's about as hard as you can get. It with all like I said, with all the interpretations, you can Google stuff about the Bill of Rights and everything, and it's kind of creepy. You'll find other people's interpretations of stuff. Like people would like we were talking about the Second Amendment before we started. People would actually fight over the commas in that and what that actually means and the militia and stuff. And you read the Federalist Papers and they describe where the Second Amendment comes from. So modern Google and the dictionary, they update their definitions and stuff, but you can go back in time and see what the actual guys who wrote the stuff meant. And I haven't gotten all the way into the Second Amendment stuff, but a lot of it's a very libertarian style of governance. It's like, okay, you have the collective where you got to be a strong union in case another Britain comes along to attack us or take land or something, which happened later in the War of 1812. you know, but the rights still come from not just God, but a God. The whole point is not that you're religious, but that the government does not give you rights, like these positive rights, like European countries have. So that and like whatever the government can give you, they can take away. So, like I said, these guys were smart enough to see stuff like the Holocaust and everything coming back then. So they were like, well, we have these inalienable rights that belong to the individual. So I think on your point about like kind of the collective, or you said communally, they would come together and talk about stuff. You know, I think I don't know if it's a modern thing or what, but liberty and freedom, there are some differences, and like freedom doesn't mean you get to do what you want, and neither does liberty. Like you have responsibilities, so you have the greater good in helping out the collective, but at the same time your individual rights are protected. It's a very strange balance, and it's getting trampled. Like I said, I don't think it's a new thing. I don't think any of this is new. You can go back in our entire history and find all kinds of strange, just where the Constitution was ignored. I mean, the Japanese Americans in World War II, they they had God-given rights under our Constitution, but our government did not want to give them those rights, so they just took them away and locked them up. It's like if we followed the Constitution back then, that wouldn't have happened. It's like I said, it's kind of a libertarian point of view. It's like you can I like how, I don't know if you guys know Ben Shapiro, but I like how he puts it. You can swing your fist around in the air all you want and yell all you want, but as soon as you hit me, you violated my rights. So that's a good way to put it. It's like everybody gets to do what they want till they start interfering with others. And then the other argument of that is these days everybody's offended by everything. So now free speech is offensive and has to be controlled. So it's like, I don't know. That's why I like to wave your fist around. Like free speech, I could say whatever I want if I'm not actually shooting you or attacking you or messing with your property, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. If I'm not affecting that, you're okay, but yeah, it's hard to get kids in the modern world to think about it that way, because it's the light the world's too easy. It's really too easy in the West, so it's easy to not to forget about these documents that are really important. And that's brought to you by German beer.
Only the best. So, but it is crazy the dynamic of that because
Oh, I lost you.
of that
There you are.
we have this security blanket that even if we are at our worst, somebody's there to take care of us. Like the government will give, you know, support for, the people that can't take care of themselves. Um, I think for us, we kind of have disempowered ourselves as a nation. I think we have allowed other people to kind of domesticate us. And I really think that if we can find a way to transition back to where we were the ones who were expansing and we were the ones that were able to bring a community together and have a fund created within the community so that the community could use it to expand their town or to advance their schools or stuff like that. It was less of a dependence on the government. Obviously the government was allotting them lands and certain, benefits and rights, but the community was the only way that town was or that province was going to survive. And it was a very that's where the democracy came into place so significantly, was because the community was the part in which that was going to be a thriving town or if that was going to be a graveyard. um, and I want us to really start getting back to re-empowering ourselves as in our communities, to really start finding ways to use money to fix things that are within the community instead of waiting for the government to fix things in the community, and it keeps lacking in that avenue. um,
I think so if anybody wants to go check out the Randall actual stuff, I made a personality called Governor Freedom, and I made up a personality like if I was running a state. Uh and I had to overdo it because yeah, you can't impersonate a public figure. So made up a ridiculous name, and I used one of the army training countries. I think Arnland is our European one, and so I had to embellish it, like I said, to not get in trouble. But I do, I don't, I never. It's like in the army, I'd always tell my guys like, don't just complain about stuff. Give me a solution. So if you have a problem with how something's being done, fine, I'm all ears if I can change it, but give me a solution. Otherwise, shut up. And so that's kind of what I did with this personality. I was like, if I was in charge, this is what I would do. And so if anybody wants to hear that stuff, you can find it on that Randall Actual or just YouTube Governor Freedom. And it's like, I'm probably gonna do more of that until my page gets shut down because it's kind of no holds barred. Like, and a lot of it I overdo it, because you gotta have fun with it. But you know, yeah, I like how you put it, and you keep referring back to communities. Like, uh, I'll say one thing: being in Germany, it's really cool. Um, the Germans that know our history and paid attention to us, like they absolutely love the American pioneering spirit, and a lot of them, until they meet us drunk in downtown being asshole soldiers, they love us because if you know the American story, it's like, I mean, I wish I knew the, well, there's 2 of you. We got an infiltrator. But it's like, it Plymouth or Jamestown, it was like the great majority of the people that landed there, by the next year, they were dead. It was a tiny percentage of people that survived a year, and word eventually got over to Europe. It's like, yeah, it's a terrible adventure. You might die along the way. Your kids most likely will die because they don't have freaking vitamins and supplements on those ships, and it's like if you survive the trip over to this great land, you might die within the first year. And I want to say 1 in 6. People could probably quote me on that and Google it, but it was 1 in 6 survived. It was terrible, and people kept coming over. So Europe was either that bad at the time that is like, I'm probably going to die, but I'm going over there because this place sucks, or it was just the pioneering spirit of I don't know what the hell's out there. I could die, and I most likely will die if I have a family of 6. One of us will make it, and people did it anyway. And like our entire foundation up to the revolution and everything, the expansion westward, it was all based on that spirit. And it's like, so like I said, the Europeans that know and understand that stuff, they're infatuated with it. They're like, that is just heroic. And anytime I butt heads with my German friends, because they're pretty European either way, you know, I like with the corona stuff going on. There, Germany, everybody else over here is getting away from the game. You guys barely played it in Florida, but Germans are doubling down on it. They're using this Russian crisis as as distraction to say all adults have to be vaccinated. And like most of the even California is dropping this stuff. And to watch Germany go back to the just blind obedient stuff, but anyway, that's just an example. We'll butt heads about that stuff, and they're like, "Yeah, you Americans, you don't give a crap." And it's like, well, that's why we are American, because you think about the Europeans coming over to America. Um, it's like 90 if you the whole COVID survival rate, whether you had comorbidities or not, it was like above 98% for everybody total, whether you got it or not, whatever, just 98% across the board survival rate. So if you told the people coming to Jamestown and Plymouth back then, hey, you only have a 98% survival rate. Why are you going over there? You know, so tell Americans these days, it's just ridiculous, like how we've lost that pioneering spirit. It's like, well, only 2% of you will die. It sucks. Don't get me wrong. I don't want everybody's grandma to die and stuff. Like I had it. It wasn't fun, but it's like
Yeah.
that's not the American pioneering spirit. It's really not. And I know a lot of people
I,
hate me for that, but
but I can you hear me? Are we good to go on audio?
yeah.
Okay. So I think the transition of that is because we have incorporated so many immigrants. I'm a first generation American on my mother's side, and the view of America, the immigrants are to not mess it up. Fall in line, do as you're told, and don't mess it up. And it's different than the pioneer mentality of go explore and go take what's yours, or what could be yours. Go adventure to see what's new. Um, and I think that's kind of how we've adapted. Because we're a lot of our population is from immigrants that were coming from difficult situations all over. And once our laws got put into place, we kind of um, stopped that mentality. Well, we stopped that original pioneer mentality and started transitioning over to, okay, fall in line, do as you're told, because you want to stay here. You don't want to go back to your country because there's opportunities here. And it's
Is it that,
almost as if
or
we have
is it
been
that, or do we just
told,
not know how to implement the pioneering spirit anymore?
yes,
Because
that's
back
it.
then it was rugged on ships out in the woods, dealing
Yes.
with Bigfoot and bears and guns. And these days, the pioneering spirit is totally different. It's we
Yeah.
don't understand it. That's what I think.
Well, the closest thing we have are entrepreneurs.
Right.
That's the closest thing we have.
Which is extremely dangerous these days. Going out and trying to do your own business, that's crazy.
It is.
I mean, what's the American population that is on the government's dime? It's a lot. A lot of our population is doing something with the government, like
Hmm.
government workers,
Yeah.
welfare, veterans, like we're all it's like the government's trying to grow and
Yeah.
get more of us to either work for them or depend on them. And
The government's,
yeah,
well, I would, all right. I want your opinion about this, but we'll get into that later. Um, the government is a business, and the purpose of a business is to expand. And if we are able more, how do I say, more people from the government to create their own avenue aside from staying in the government's pocket, then I think we have a way of separating. But as long as we're tied to the government, we kind of feel that we are obligated to fall under their line of regulations.
you don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah.
If I mean, I was just talking to another veteran buddy about this yesterday. We were talking about social security, and it's just even the Germans are discussing maybe bringing that back or eventually stopping it. And all the older people are freaking out, and it's crappy because a lot of us younger people were like, well, you got to save for your future. You can't depend on the government to take your money now, save it for you later, and give it back to you. That's kind of ridiculous, especially watching how the government does stuff. Managing money is not their best freaking suit. So, but for all these older people, they didn't learn those lessons. They didn't know. Like they had pensions that disappeared, 401ks disappeared. Now you got still Social Security. They haven't learned their lesson. So what do you do? Just cut them off all like immediately? Like that's a tough call. And Trump, whether you love him or hate him, there was one thing I liked when he just threw it out. He was like, we have to look at Social Security and what we're gonna do with that." And all the news ran with Trump's gonna kill Social Security, we're all gonna die, you know, and it's like that's not how he put it, but you can understand. I'm sure he lost a lot of older voters, even conservatives at that time, because they're thinking about losing their money. And so me and my veteran buddy were talking about it, and that was his argument. He was like, "Well, what if you lost your VA disability?" And they were just like, "Well, you don't get your disability." Kind of like unemployment. Unemployment's designed to get you to the next employment, and then they taper you off. That's how it's supposed to go. Um, and I was like, "Yeah, that's a good point." Like if we come down to overall sequestration, and we gotta slowly just take pennies away from everybody, it's like, yeah, I'll be willing to do it, and everybody should be willing to do it because we can't just keep printing money forever. And it sucks, but I think a lot of people, I don't want to say it's selfish, but a lot of people are just they don't want to be the first people to take that step. Like, but actually I will say Rand Paul, the senator, he tried to put in a bill to start this. I can't think of the word when the government starts to cut back, but he wanted it was like a penny bill. Every year he wanted to take a penny from each program out of each government agency's pocket and just slowly add to it and slowly defund things, not completely, but just slowly take money out of stuff. And it was a great idea because it was like a penny here, a penny there. It's not really going to hurt you, but it'll get us in the right direction. And this is when you can plainly see the swamp and the corruption is bipartisan, because it was turned down, and even all the Republican guys in the Senate turned it down. So because they wanted to protect their own paycheck. But Rand Paul, like I think he got a lot more popular because of the COVID stuff, how he went after Fauci. But he's he's just an example. There's been people in the House too trying to do stuff like this. Um, to try to start, getting rid of corruption and just start doing better governance, like representing us more. and they just get steamrolled, you know? So it's like I remember a long time ago, Rand Paul was in the primaries and he was just a big joke. People just shut him down, and I didn't read into him, so I just didn't care either way. But when I first read about that, I was like, "Holy crap! This is a dude that's trying to implement something in the House or in Congress that's going to affect him too." And that's awesome. Oh, and then everybody votes against it. Go figure. Republican and Democrat, you know. It's like so it's yeah, the swamp is bipartisan, man, for sure. For sure. That's something that should unite us. Both sides are corrupt, you know.
And that's what I see. In the reason that purple is such ingrained colors because I don't agree with either side. I see both sides as taking advantage.
Yeah,
And the unity of both allows conflicting opinions to come up with an agreement amongst themselves. And if my opinion, I actually have a really big question I would love to ask you. Um, if and what do you trust in big government?
well, big government, I don't trust any of it. But just overall governance, I don't know. I'd have to get have to get back to you on that.
Well, it's
I
just
mean,
it's a big topic, but seeing how it's been run for, you know, I've been alive for 3 decades as of right now, three plus, um, and seeing the succession of each, generation, um, it's I don't know. It's almost as if they're taking more and more and seeing what's allowed until the point where you resist, and then they know that's their point, their starting point next time.
totally. That I can't be the only one that noticed since Trump got out and Biden's approval ratings have been under 40% like the entire time. I and Joe Rogan getting in trouble with Spotify, like more people have been um realizing that, you know, there's it's not necessarily a right or left thing anymore. We break it down to that because we kind of follow the media and get stuck in that. Um, on my on the veteran page, the Randall Actual, I was talking to one of my really good friends. He was a soldier of mine, John. He's a professional boxer, and he's a black dude, and he's pretty liberal, like left leaning on a lot of topics. But me and him, we served together, and we've been buddies for a long time. And we were always a good example in my unit of having totally different sides and stuff, but we'd go on missions together. We would argue in the truck, we would fight over topics, but we'd still be fine. And we'd go out and he didn't drink, but we'd go out together and have a good time. But I had him on my show for a little bit and we talked about this stuff and I was like, uh we both agreed. I was like, um, I think Americans are more united today than they realize. It's just there's a because we're all slowly feeling and recognizing that, right or left, our government is not really representing us. There's corruption on both sides. They're all trying to take care of themselves. And I don't want to be like Alex Jones freaking go too crazy, but I think everybody can feel like we're all being just kind of pushed aside and pushed against each other. And it seems like as soon as we all start to band together and think about the stuff, then I don't know, man. It's not false flag stuff, but there's some other distraction in the media. Something else pops up, like just before this Russian stuff, all of a sudden, all these Democrat states just started ending mandates and Fauci slowly started to disappear. And it's like, that I don't think that was just because the midterms and elections are coming up. I think a lot of it was just they were realizing that they were really pushing Americans too far because like the media doubled down. They were like, yeah, if you're against mandates and all this stuff, you're just a right wing freaking racist and all that. And you know, thankfully, because of the internet, they just couldn't keep that up because it's like, well, there was an exodus out of California of like 600,000 people in the last couple of years. They just left California because they're tired of it. And where did they go? They went to mostly conservative states. And then out of New York, the same thing, like 200 something thousand people left in 1 year because they're tired of the taxes and the politics and everything. And don't get me wrong, like I don't think Texas is super awesome. I make fun of them all the time, but the point is like that's where they're really dividing people. And a lot of that was just the COVID stuff. It's like Florida, you guys had freedom for the most part, but you had states like South Dakota, Christy Noem, Governor Noem. They didn't shut down at all. And she was public about it from the beginning. The media tried to destroy her no matter what numbers she would show and how well they did. Like Sweden never did any of this crap and they were fine. And the media just slandered them. But my point is, like, I think people just really started to get tired of the COVID crap. And they just, I mean, even if even if you're like supporting these people, like I have some stake in California. So let's say I lived there and was okay, I'll wear my mask. I don't want to kill grandma and all this. I believe everything they're saying. As soon as I saw my governor who signed all this crap in that French restaurant with all the people that wrote these policies with him without his mask on or any of that, while we couldn't work and we couldn't go out and go to restaurants, I would be done. And that's when that exodus started. When all these Californians saw their governor, they couldn't work, they couldn't send their kids to school, and they definitely could not go to a restaurant without a mask. And they see their governor who makes all this crap violating it at his private little thing. It's like it's like if we had that level of corruption on the Republican or conservative side, like it would be all over the media. And I'm not saying the right doesn't have that, but in the moment, it's like the news is just one, it's all left. And whether it's all left or all right, anytime Americans start to come back together and say, hey, you know what? I don't think the government likes any of us. I think they're all corrupt. Then something else happens, and we all get distracted. It's like it's crazy, man. You had the stuff in Canada going on. Like when Canadians are in the streets and pretty pissed off, like that's something's going on because Canadians are not like that. They're polite, and it wasn't a fringe racist minority. It was like a lot of people were tired of not getting to work and go out.
Sorry, like thinking about Canadians revolting. We look at Canadians as like the most proper, polite people, and they have rallied against something that they felt that they have been discriminated against or pushed to a certain limit that they can't take anymore. That's kind of what we're dealing with. It's
Oh,
the regulation to the point of resistance, and for the biggest thing that I see, and the reason why the civil flag is so important is because there is nothing that can unify both sides in a way that both sides would agree. But if you can delineate government jurisdiction and civilian jurisdiction, you are now allowing a platform of a communal response. And it's not too right, too left. It's the citizen and being a citizen of this nation. It allows you to separate. Okay, well, the sheriffs are the only ones that are under government authority. Public, like police departments, are under civilian authority, but there's no way to differentiate that with the eye test because they act like they're under government jurisdiction. So if you can have somebody be like, no, you're wearing the civil peace flag, you're under civilian jurisdiction, I am a civilian, you need to act according.
makes
Then
sense.
it allows. For me, the problem with America is we have been deprived of education and overly educated. There's two big, polar experiences in America. And there's no middle ground of general education. And if we could have a baseline of knowledge so that everybody can communicate on the same, you know, wavelength. If you can be like, okay, well, police need to act in this way, and us as citizens are coming together and holding them accountable to what they're allowed to do, then that's the citizens taking the power. But they have to know that they have that power. They have to know that these people are under their jurisdiction. They have to know what they're allowed to do. As of right now, if somebody goes against the police, it's almost interpreted like they're going against the government, and that government can do anything they want to do to them, and they have nothing to fight back with, unless you're knowledgeable in law.
Well, I mean, it's kind of true, you know, like I can't stand hearing this. I think it's racist where it's like, well, black kids are taught to be afraid of the police and yes, sir, no, sir. It's like, I guess in some bad neighborhoods, like maybe because of bad parenting, kids, like black kids might be taught that. But I would think we're all taught to respect the police because you're respecting the law. But, I've had my crappy run-ins with cops, and I'd be like, "Yes, sir, no, sir," because I didn't think about if they were black or white, or if I was black or white. I just didn't want to mess with the police. And then it was funny because my dad was a firefighter, and most of the cops knew him, so I didn't want to deal with my dad. I could get arrested and beat up by a cop, but I didn't want to deal with my dad afterward for disrespecting them. So, but it's kind of like, where do we draw that line? Like we have the rule of law, and if we all trust that system, it's easy to see that uniform and just respect the uniform. Like in the military, we respect the rank, not the person, and what that rank represents. But it's kind of interesting times because we're getting to a point where everything has been so corrupted and we're not sure what to trust anymore. If we can trust that authority, it's like there's plenty of cases where you should not have to trust that authority and you probably should go against it. But so what do you do these days? Do you teach your kids to say, screw the police, they're all corrupt because our laws are corrupt? Or do you teach your kids to blindly follow and try to fight it later? But then again, our judicial system is not looking too bright. So I don't know if we went down the rabbit hole, I would say if whatever this anti-American spirit is that's trying to break our system, I think they're doing a pretty good job because if you want to crush a system, you got to end people's faith in it, and their trust in it. So we've all, like I said, with liberty, there's a responsibility there. We have a rule of law, so you have to be a good person to deserve freedom and to enjoy it. And so for the longest time, that's worked. Being a good, moral, decent, prudent person has worked. But when we don't agree on the law anymore, and the people enforcing the law, if we don't agree if they're like legitimate or not, then we start to have this gray area. So if this anti-American stuff has done their job, it's in, well, number one, we've lost faith in our election system. And you can look up experts. I think I can't remember her name, but one of the experts was on the Joe Rogan show, and I wish I could remember her name, but it was a her. And she was like pointing out that our election system since 2016 is not as bad as everybody thinks, and it's not as bad as the media portrays. So when Trump won, the entire time, all we heard was that Russia collusion, Trump stole the election, blah, blah, blah. And then when Trump lost, the right tried that. And of course, it got shut down quick because for some reason, the left was able to claim a stolen election for 4 years and riot and all that. But when the right tried it, it was bad. So the point is, both sides lost their faith in the election system, even though many experts are saying it's still one of the most dependable election systems in the world, especially in the Western world. It's still a pretty, so yeah, you're gonna have some issues. I mean, we're a large country and all the states still follow the 9 and 10 amendments. We still have states can still make their own decisions on how they do stuff. That's a good thing. You don't want a federal Wizard of Oz, one guy in DC saying how everybody has to vote. That's ridiculous. Yeah. So, but the point is, the left, the sane Democrats and liberals like lost their faith in the election system when Trump won. When Trump lost, a lot of the people on the right lost their faith in it. So now the left or whoever has won because Americans don't trust their electoral system anymore. That's bad. And then but before 2016, Americans have started to lose their trust in the police and the rule of law. And look at the ATF, all the stuff they're up to. And then now with our judicial branch, it's like if we lose faith in there was a poll like in 2018, like 80 something percent of Americans on all sides, on both sides, thought Congress was corrupt and useless. Over 80%. I don't even know what it is these days. It's probably we probably don't even want to look that up. But that's one branch, two chambers. So if we lose all of our faith in our judicial branch, like our executive branch is a clown show. It's become a freaking it's a circus. This voting on this one guy in one branch, and that's not how our system's developed. But if we lose our faith in the judicial branch, we're screwed because now whatever. I don't think anybody's back there planning all this crap and coordinated. It's just some kind of poison eating away at our system, and then we're going to be at risk. So if you want to worry about outside influence and all that, then we're going to be in trouble because we were all united under the flag and American values and system. But if we don't even trust our own systems anymore on either side, like it's kind of it's going to be bad.
Um, I would. Can you hear me? Are we good to go on
Yep.
sound? Okay. Um, so I would like to speak on the losing faith of the judicial branch side of it. Um, so me, I'm a mixed American. I'm half Dominican, half white, but I grew up in a lot of inner cities, and I personally have been part of injustice where somebody can make a report, make it however they want to make it, and then you're the one that pays the consequences for it. For families that have people that have been taken from them unjustly, that loses faith for that whole family, not just the person that got incarcerated. So if you have kids that see parents unjustly taken, or friends of parents, or friends of friends, it does. You might only, if you correlate that to death, if you see that many people dying around you, you're going to feel like death follows you. If you see that many people being unjustly incarcerated or unjustly, interrogated, you're gonna feel that it follows you everywhere you go. And with that, you know, I as a colored man in America, I felt more threatened once people wanted to take up their rights because they didn't know that they were taking away other people's rights of freedom. It was hard for me to be a part of that. It was hard for me to feel people imposing their will strictly because if you have opposing opinions, that doesn't mean that you control that you're supposed to control me. If we have conflicting ideologies, that just means that we're different. That doesn't mean you're supposed to control me and I'm supposed to abide by your thoughts. And that's where I think was the problem, is the left, you know, got into the public through media and got them to abide by their ideologies because they made it seem as if the other side was radical. And then the right side goes over to the left and shows that the left side are just they're soft, whiny, complainers. And once you can generalize people like that, the same way that colored people have been generalized in America, it's taking away the reality and the effect of that action towards them or that thought process towards them, because it translates to minor things in life: looks, clasping of purses, walking on other sides of streets, you know, wanting to not be around them. It causes a big disruption between them, to the point where now they don't even see the same world anymore. They live in two completely different worlds, and
Yeah.
the world that they've created supports their views, and they don't want to know what the other side looks like. You know, if I'm in my suburbs in a nice secure location, I don't know want to know what it's like in an inner city where you have, you know, gun shootings and rapes and prostitutions and, you know, trash. Like, I don't want to know what it's like to be there. Those people are different than me, you know. But if you're a child, you don't have a choice what your upbringing is. You're brought into that environment, and that's all you ever see. So you grow up seeing that separation of people that are look down upon you, and then people that, you know, reinforce the ideology that keeps you in that situation. It keeps you in your box, it keeps you in your compartment, and it doesn't allow you to branch out and reach that other side, because you're not supposed to know what it's like to be on that other side. You're not supposed to know what it's like to be on the right if you were on the left. You're not supposed to know what it's like to be on the left if you've been on the right. You're not supposed to know those things. There's supposed to be a definitive line in the ground, and you choose either or. Now, if you can add police into that, police have been targeting lower education communities, not necessarily lower income. Lower education communities have been targeted because they don't have other outlets or communication skills to express anything. So the only thing they can do is express themselves through action. And if they don't have a father figure at home because that father is incarcerated, or there's some issue that has been generationally passed down, that person's now going to look out to friends or external sources, gangs, or societies, clubs, and they're going to do what's required to be accepted by that group, because they need direction. They need somebody to show them what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. And us, as you know, in politics, we don't have that person to show us what we want to do, what we want, what we're supposed to do. We're going grabbing onto a group and looking that gang and looking that to them to be like, hey, what am I supposed to do? I'll do anything I need to be accepted into your group. But that's not what a father would do. Or, you know, or a mother. I'm not against, you know, LGBTQ, you know, but if you have somebody there that can lay down the right and wrongs and hold you accountable to that, it allows you to understand your environment in a way that you can be successful in it. If you're looking to other people, they're going to suggest to you what's in their best benefit, what you should do. And you do that, but it's not going to necessarily be what you believe in. It's what they believe in. I
Yeah,
go on rants a lot.
every kid needs a, especially boys need a father figure. And I've I've been married for a long time. My wife is awesome. Uh my mom is awesome, but I'll say like boys need a dad. I I don't care if people hate me for that. Like, because I think dads are more likely to beat your ass when you come home with like a bag of weed in your pocket or cigarettes in your pocket. Like, my mom could be scary, but if I came home screwing around with the wrong types of dudes and my dad found out, like, it was way more scary. And not only would he want to punish me and kick my ass, but he would want to show me what else to do. It's like you said, it's not just about the father figure, but um like, we're humans are struggling people, and Americans, we're just strugglers. So we don't have a struggle in the Western world. I mean, we have all these issues, but we really don't have problems. Like, the poorest people in America are still within the top 1% of the world in wealth. Poor people in America are overweight. They have smartphones, they have TVs, they have cars, air conditioning. It's like, we're still doing pretty good. So, but we're always looking for a struggle in life. It's like you go to the gym, you feel awesome after the gym. You go for a run, you feel awesome. Like you need that pressure to break you so you can grow and develop. And so I think in this Western world, especially, yeah, like in urban areas or even like crappy, like what we call white trash areas, like trailer parks in Appalachia, like these poor white rural areas, like they have the same problems as the inner cities. It's just out in the country, but they don't have anything to do, like you said. So they don't have a father figure. There might be dudes around, but they're not like father figures putting them into some kind of role in society. So like what you talked about with community, we all want to like fulfill some kind of destiny or find our mission or whatever. And we, as kids, younger people, we need somebody pushing us into that and developing us. And it's, yeah, I don't know. I think, I think we got to get past the racial stuff. And it's really sad because I don't know. I grew up in on the Gulf Coast and it was a pretty well mixed place. Like we were pretty interracial. Um, Sometimes I thought like whites were minorities in some of my classes. And it was like in the South, man, it's not really a big deal. Like race was, I'd be called white boy sometimes when somebody was mad at me, but it really wasn't a big deal. And now it seems like it just keeps being more of a big deal. And it's like, all right, I thought we were trying to get past all that, but now it's like every issue on the TV and the news, everything comes down to what race the person was. And it's like, all right, well, for every bad inner city thing with minorities you can talk about, I can find some meth head freaking white area that has the same issues. It's like, so I don't know. I think until we can realize we're it's kind of like when Bernie Sanders talks about the they and us. It's like, okay, yeah, but I don't think just taxing anybody who has some money is going to fix it all. Like, we need to look at it like they and us, like possibly the entire government and the media, which is becoming a fourth branch of the government versus us. Because it's like I said before, anytime Americans seem to start to unite on stuff, something else comes up that makes us want to hate each other again. And it's like, I don't know. But that brings us back to like the individuality of Americanism. Like if we got away from this collective stuff and tribalism, none of that would matter. It's like whenever somebody says, well, white people do this and black people do this, like that's all cool in comedy because we have some old racial stereotypes that we can all laugh about. But if we're going to talk about like statistics and certain issues going on, like I don't want to hear groups of people and stuff. It's like, okay, so and so did this and it was good or bad. Like, got it. Like that's. I don't know, man. We're going down a road where we're gonna start to break up into different sects like they did in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's like that's not good. We're a really big country. There's really, like I said, we got the Ninth and 10th Amendments like that protect the states' rights, and any right not in the Constitution enumerated belongs to the individual, the state or the individual. So the states are big enough. Like, let's take a silly example. Okay, well, Florida, DeSantis, I know he's trying to claim that y'all are the best state in the world. I think South Dakota was awesome because they stayed open the whole time. They never closed. But anyway, okay, so let's say a year ago, DeSantis is like, we're not going to play these games. We're going to open the state up. You can stay home if you want. If you're scared, you wear a mask, do all this stuff. Everybody else, be Americans, live dangerously and go. Okay, so why does all that have to be decided on a federal level? Like everything seems to be decided on a federal level these days. Like if you live in Seattle, it's a different demographic, it's close quarters. You may have more issues with COVID. If you want to wear a mask and sanitize everything and be scared, fine, do that in Seattle. But why the hell do you care what they're doing down in Tampa's a pretty big area, but let's say like I don't know, bumfuck Florida, where the population's 400. Can't they make their own decision on what they want to do? Like, can't Florida enact the Ninth and 10th Amendments and say, this is what Florida's going to do. You guys do what you want. Like, and I'll say, I did a video on this that a lot of people hated, but Trump, if there's one good thing Trump did, it's that he sat back and let the states make their own decisions. So you saw when Biden came in, the federal government was like, this is what you guys have to do. All these federal mandates came out. When Trump was in office, somebody please tell me what federal mandates came out of COVID under Trump. I can't think of one, and I don't think there are any. And you can go watch interviews of these governors of states, especially Kristi Noem. She's like, yeah, the governors talk to the president all the time. We had all these meetings and committees and we discussed it. And President Trump was like, yeah, this is what we know. You guys make your state decisions. You're in charge. It's just like in the military. If your first sergeant is telling a squad what to do all the time, eventually the squad leader is going to get pissed and say, hey, you know what, Tom, this is my fucking squad. You gave me this rank and this responsibility for a reason. Let me run my squad until we have some issues and then you can step in. But yeah, it's like seriously, everything has been decided on a federal level since I've been alive and paid attention, and that's really not cool, man. Because people in friggin' Oregon state are not like the people in like South Carolina, and you don't want those people to be the same. It's like I've been all over Europe. Like there's a lot of similarities in Europe that just some things I don't like about Europe. I can find them all over Europe, and I get pissed about it. Because what's the point in traveling anywhere if everybody's the same and all the rules are the same? You know, my German friends, they go to America for vacations. They're like, I'm going to go to Nevada and shoot machine guns. And it's like, okay, so if we keep being federal about everything, you won't have machine gun ranges in Nevada because California doesn't like it. And, you know, they control the house or whatever. It's like, what? That's going to be a shitty America if all 300 plus million people are exactly the same and have the same laws. Like, fuck, sorry, fuck that. I don't want that, you know. But it goes back to the Constitution, you know.
Yeah, it really does get back to the Constitution, and I think what people need to see is we if we were, let's go back to what you were saying, if we had reestablished that pioneer mentality, then we would be able to relocate to places that supported our views. And we are the United States of America, not the United Federal Government of America.
Yeah, and a lot of people
So
did that. A lot of people left certain areas because they weren't
yeah,
happy.
and but it I think that if you can have that individualistic mentality where you are, I hate to do this, please don't say that, don't hold me to it, but in the religion aspect, I think it is more important to focus on your own faith than about the faith of those around you. I think you need to focus on your internal relationship with whatever, you know, authority that you identify with, and that should be the main focus. You need to focus on your internal commitment. You need to focus on your internal. Now, the problem is that the government will um, supersede the decision made by the state. And that's why a lot of people don't feel that the state decision is as impactful and as decisive as it really is. I mean, the state's decision is law for that state. The federal government can add. Just look at the idea of cannabis. That's the best representation that we can have. It's still federally illegal or criminalized, but it has been
Right.
decriminalized in certain states. So that is why if you go around smoking a joint across America, you will cross into federal regulations when you do that. But if you stay within your state, you can smoke freely however you want to if it's been decriminalized and it's recreational.
Yeah.
It empowers the individual. That's why you have people moving to these states that allow cannabis, because there is a large opportunity there for them to get medical treatment and to get more help and more options if they have any type of issues. um, and the doctors there are knowledgeable on that product as well, or that source, I should say. And I feel it should be the same thing with politics. If you want to have a state that doesn't have certain, you know, allocations or certain benefits or certain guarantees, then you should have that freedom to move. Now the problem is that we, because we've inflated everything, we don't have the capacity or the capability to change locations. You can't go move to California. You can move out of it, but you can't really move into it.
Nobody
Um,
wants to move to California.
yeah, you
I mean,
can't
you
really.
look at the numbers of people leaving these states versus going in. There's
Yeah,
uh, the only people going into California is like crossing the border down there, but I'm pretty sure once they see what California's like, they're heading deeper in because
yeah. I mean, it, it's it's allowing us to. The biggest thing with a relationship is the amount of control you have in it. And those of us that lose control in relationships or have lost control in a relationship feel that they've lost themselves and that they're just living for the other person. Well, we have a relationship with our government. We really do. And it's not a one-sided relationship, but because we have disregarded our feelings and disregarded our the couple aspect of working together, because we've disregarded that, we've deadened our senses, and now we just live for the government. The government is the one that makes all the decisions, and we just abide by what's been implemented. And it's abusive in that sense because they take advantage. They know that we can't rally against certain areas because it would be against our group that they've established or that we've established for ourselves. So they can push things, and they know that people would rather have friendship than stand up for something they believe in, because we are, that's who we are. We are a tribal, species. We have survival instincts, but we are a tribal community. That's how we are. That's how we survive. um
yeah. But we're the first ones that figured out how to be kind of secular and tribal, but still
mm-hmm.
be a union and support a common
mm,
union goal, because
yeah.
like I said, you can look in the Federalist Papers, like
Hmm.
the founders, I think it was Jay that talked about this a lot, John Jay, like they already recognized that America was going to be super diverse
Yeah.
and everybody would fight about everything. Like, and all this stuff was written when it was just 13 colonies. We hadn't even gone west yet. We had no idea what was over there. So
mm,
they were already looking ahead because they were basing everything off of their European history. Like, Spain still owned a lot of America. You still had a lot of French influence down on the Gulf Coast, like Mississippi, Louisiana area. That was all still French. That wasn't American. It wasn't even part of the colonies. And they were looking at their European roots and they were like, well, we've all fought over there for centuries. But we don't want to be like that. We want to be individuals first and then our little communities and colonies, but we still want to be a full union. And it's
yeah.
cool because I think it was the fifth or sixth paper by Jay that was really interesting about that because he was talking about he was using the UK as an example. He was like, so the Scots are good at this, the Irish are good at this, the Englanders are good at this, but all together they're the UK. So if you mess with one of them, they're all different types of people with different technologies, different backgrounds. They all fight against each other, but you know, if you mess with them, you're messing with all of them. And so they were kind of looking at that way, like, yeah, Americans are different. We're going to be different. We're going to be the most diverse, but we're still going to have a common value system.
Mm,
And we started off with issues, and we had a lot of. It was never a perfect country, but you can look back and see like we. I mean, I'm all over Europe these days, and there's some really cool stuff over here, but when people talk about diversity, it's like Germany's
Mm-hmm.
like 90% white Germans with German roots, German backgrounds. Like, there's a very homogenous culture in all of these countries. Like when you talk about Europe or the European Union,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like our federal level. The European Union would like federalize all the European
Mm-hmm.
countries, but yeah, they're all like white Europeans. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but America is like it's diverse,
Yeah.
it's insane how many different types of people we have there, and like we're all different. And for the longest time, and then again shortly after 9/11, we were all reunited. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, we have this common value system and it unites us. Everything else we can fight about, but the country's big enough. You do whatever you want where you want.
Yeah.
It's like the cannabis thing. That's a perfect example because I grew up in southern Mississippi where pot is always taboo,
Mm-hmm.
and I think people are kind of coming around,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're a veteran. Nobody cares, but it's like, okay, so if my family was talking about the federal government, like, yeah, we should ban pot, we should enforce that federal law. It'd be like, well, screw you, man. That
Mm-hmm.
would be a conservative Karen thing. Like, if people like in California, it's legal everywhere, and pretty sure the California government legalized it just to tax it. Because I had buddies that
Mm-hmm.
had grows out there, and they
Yep.
were legal grows, but the
30.
taxes were so high they closed them up and left
Yep.
because they were like, we can't compete with the cartel because
Yep.
it's so expensive to do it legally
Yep.
now. And then you have like USDA guys wanting to come inspect your freaking pot.
Yeah.
It's like so. But that's a good example. It's like, okay, so you can smoke pot on the street in California. Awesome. Well, my hometown, for an example, Mississippi is a constitutional carry state. I can walk around with a pistol hidden in my belt and an AR-15 on my shoulder. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a perfect example of the Constitution. We all get what we want. You guys do what you want.
Yep.
And it's just strange, like to see this whole everything is federalized now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, and with the socialist argument, like Ted Cruz has an awesome argument. He's like, well, okay, if you want to do state funded healthcare and all that, fine. Try that experiment in your state. Do it there. If it works, try it in other states and then try to federalize it. But all these crazy ideas these people come up with, they want to make it a federal law first. Like
First. Yeah.
Obamacare. I wasn't even living in America to get to try it. So I just heard from the outside how it was going on both sides. And it's like, I was wondering that back then. I was like, why didn't they just try this in a state first? Why the hell is this a 300 million population, a massive population study first? Like,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't stuff like this be tried on like smaller sample sizes first?
Yeah.
And by the time it got in, it's like, what's the government going to do? Like, take it away from people now? It's not going
No,
to
you
happen.
can't. I mean, that's people's lifeline.
Yeah, because you do have people that are screwed by the system. And
Yes.
there's a lot of people that won by that, but there's also a lot of people that lost. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do now? It's just like the Social Security. I don't want to pay Social Security. I don't need it when I'm older. When I'm old enough to draw from it, I'm not going to need it, and it's not going to be there anyway unless we
No.
just keep printing money. But I have my
No.
own system set up. I don't want to pay into it anymore. I think it should be optional. But all the people older than me, they're like, "Well, we need that."
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Well, it's that's how they've been conditioned to think. They've been conditioned that they have to have it. They have to put all their money because it's getting taken away from them. So it had to get sold in a way that it was a necessity. And for us, you and I are going to be living in the prime of the crypto world.
yeah,
We aren't going to be printing anything anymore. We're going to be mining, and we're. I mean, there is no social security in crypto. I mean, that's a prior generational thing that they got sold into. It's almost like it was a con for them to take the money away, knowing that when they die, it's not going to matter anymore. Because I mean, if we have entrepreneurs who are doing, choosing what taxes are taken out, as opposed to being an employer where you just kind of have your employee, you get more control over what you can claim if you're doing them as a business owner. You get to have more say so in what you need to be compensated for because you have been taken this much away, this much away, this much away, this much away. Um, if if we're going to be looking at the government, I think the government needs to be implementing um, like a universal study site or a state where all studies are done in this environment because this is the most mixed, uh, accurate representation of the population. So I think that those places need to be predetermined, and it has to be the most diverse part of America. It can't be in like, you know, Boston where you have, majority of whites. South Dakota, majority of whites. Can't be in, you know, South, you know, certain parts of Florida. There's, a whole Latin community. No white people there. So you have to be able to have, the right balance. But if you don't do things, if you imagine if science didn't do a clinical study before they started letting out different types of prescriptions. I mean, if the first time something went wrong,
Like the
I mean, you'd be looking
vaccinations.
to, yeah, you'd be looking to sue. um,
Well, who are you gonna sue
eh,
when we
when the
we
government,
can't even trust? I mean, dude, with that, it's funny. Like 2 years ago, the left was totally against big pharma and vaccinations,
mm-hmm,
and here we are. It's like trust it and get vaccinated. It's like, okay, wait a minute, like you guys were hardcore about this shit, but who are you gonna sue? Like what if I had a buddy that legit got myocarditis from one of the shots, and
mm-hmm,
it's like even his doctor was like, "Yeah, you probably shouldn't have got that. You probably should have got corona instead." Because he's a
mm-hmm,
younger dude. He's just a little bigger.
yeah,
It's like, who's he gonna sue? Is he gonna sue freaking the people that made the vaccination? They're
no,
just gonna send it off to the government, which is gonna freaking like shut that lawsuit up
mm-hmm.
and then tax us to pay for it.
I mean, that's the other side of the coin here. Like everything that we bring to the table um, as an issue has to get paid for by us because it's not even going to be able to get looked at unless it gets put in front of, you know the certain branches, and we pay for their time.
Well, there's a really good resource for that. It's called openthebooks.com. I can't remember the guy's name. But you can search on YouTube, uh, the depth of the swamp or how deep is the swamp. And it's not like a conspiracy thing like it sounds like. It's a lecture from this guy. He's a super smart guy, and he was an entrepreneur before this, but they have been able to track government spending, state, local, and federal, and they've been able to like bring transparency to a lot of these agencies. And so, first of all, they've proven how corrupt both sides are. Like he was talking about Illinois just being, he calls it the Super Bowl of corruption. And he was saying like 6 out of their last 10 governors have been in federal prison, and 2 of them at the same time. He was like, yep, a Republican and a Democrat were in prison at the same time for corruption. But anyway, like that's a resource because like most of these bills that we're looking at, like when the House is writing a bill, you can go look up before it's a bill. You can go look up what they're putting in there, and they're usually these big omnibus 2,000 page freaking nothing that nobody can read. But you can go find them and read through them, and you can read abstracts and highlights, and you can see what people are saying. The main thing is, and it's funny because whenever a bill comes out, you can totally tell what news site, what they support, which side they support, because you can hear what they're saying about it. They'll be like, yeah, this is a Save the Puppies Act. We all like puppies. If you don't like puppies, you're a racist and puppy hater. So you better support this bill. And you can go find that bill and read about it, and you can see that they just made something up or found something They took one little tiny thing out of there that they liked, and that's what they're pushing. And the problem is Americans don't read that shit. It's like we're so busy on TikTok and Facebook and all this silly stuff. It's only people like I'll say one cool thing about my generation and younger is we like the long format stuff. So when Rogan was joking, he was like, I'll have Trump and Biden on and they can debate here and we're gonna do it for 3 hours. Because the older generations, they're cool with watching an hour bullshit debate where they have 30 seconds to talk about a policy which they have no clue about. They just say what's popular for their side and then they move on. And then these people watching it, they go back to their NFL or whatever bullshit they're watching, but the younger generations, if they're not reading those bills online to see what's actually happening, they're listening to these podcasts on either side, whatever. Still, they're listening to long, intense stuff. And that's pretty cool because you can't read all these bills, but if somebody has to talk about what they want to do for 3 hours, they have to know a little more about it than what like our presidential candidates are trying to say in 30 seconds. It's like that's kind of cool, but that open the books is really cool because it's just government corruption down to the penny. Like, the 82 billion that we left in Afghanistan, they were the ones that put out that number. That's from them. And like all the news agencies on both sides were reporting that 82 billion of stuff left. And they knew that because they already knew what we had given Afghanistan in the last 12 years. So they were like, and they had it down to the weapon systems and sights and vehicles and everything. So um, I'll pull up this guy's name because I just watched another talk of his, but you can find his name and listen to his talks, and he will actually go through it line by line, like this type of truck, this many of these many night sights. And what happened to a soldier or a Marine if he lost his weapon or a thermal night sight downrange? Imagine losing a thermal night sight in Afghanistan. Dude, you'd be shot on sight. And if you misplaced your weapon, there was posters everywhere and freaking hands across the fob to go find it. But our government and all these higher level people just leave the shit over there. And who's gonna pay for that? Like nobody's going to burn for that. And I don't put it all on Biden. I don't think it's all the president's fault. We have all these echelons under him. So, but still nobody's gonna burn for it. Like
Well, I
Congress
think
should
it's
be
because
fucking the DOD
nobody's
for
been in
this.
the military, Randall. Nobody's been in the military.
Right, yeah.
They don't know what that's like to be held accountable.
Yeah, but there should be we have to vote on the NDAA. It's still from our constitution. We have to reapprove or reallocate funds for the military every 2 years based
Hmm.
on our constitution. I would want a pay cut out of this. These 82 billion, that's coming out of somebody's freaking paycheck.
Yeah.
How about the military overall? But the problem is, like, this is where I'll point out Karen's on the conservative side. Anytime you talk about defunding the military or reappropriating funds in the military, the Karen Republicans flip out because they're
Yep.
like, well, pro military no matter what. And like, I'd go home to South Mississippi and I'd hear this and I'd be like, look, we have enough money in the military. Like back then I was Army infantry. I'm like, we have enough money. We just pissing out the window. Like we have to do better with what we have.
Yeah.
We don't need more money. We need better decision making. And
Better education.
yeah.
I
And
mean,
it's
we're
on the
dude. Look.
company level, we're pretty good about this stuff. It's like once
Yes.
you get up to these generals and above, they're all corrupt politicians at that point.
And especially being in the Marine Corps, we got the leftovers of every other branch, and we had to make it work and be more effective than any other branch. So
Yeah.
it was understanding that you don't need all up to date equipment in order to accomplish missions and get things done. So
Right.
this humongous budget is completely unnecessary with at least a Marine mentality, because you can accomplish things with bare minimal. It's a matter of your effectiveness, your preparation, and your after action. If you're able to move forward again with a different approach, but the big thing is, if we don't have um, that standard, if we don't have that idea that um, when we are voting people in, they are fully knowledgeable on what they're doing. I mean, when you brought up that 3-hour discussion, it for the the presidential discussion, it brought to light in my mind, well, if they don't know what they're talking about, they're going to look like an absolute fool for 3 hours, and they're not going to answer any questions. They're just going to bounce around left and right and try and deflect. And even even to piggyback off of you with the Karen in the military, in my mind, you have police departments, and the police departments are, the minute they hear defund the police, there's all these people that come out the woodworks. We got to support the blue line, support the blue line. A lot of the problems with the police departments is they are not solving the cases in which they're getting paid to solve. And that's the problem, is that you have all these forensic money, but then you all have all these people that are still in prison because they haven't had their file completed yet. And now they're in this purgatory where they can't get in, but they can't get out, but they're already in. So they just sit there and wait and wait and wait for forensics, and forensics will, at least in New York, I think forensics solves like 1% of their cold cases, but yet they're getting tens of millions of dollars. So
and all they do is grow their budget and grow their departments in there to just get
yep.
more money and get more funding, not doing their job.
Yes. So it's not necessarily defunding. We don't need to defund the military. We just need to allocate funds to do things in a practical manner. I mean, you don't need all your money going to forensics. You need it to go into more community outreach. You need it to be more, learn how to win the hearts and minds. Like, that's the problem. We keep talking about it, and yet we don't do it. we tell people to do it, but big picture wise, we never do it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it's like in more populated areas. But I grew up in a small city of about 30,000 people. So, pretty, it's on the Gulf Coast. So kind of like Destin or Fort Walton before they blew up. Nice little beach
Yeah.
area. But most of the cops you ran into, you knew them by family name. They knew you by family name. It was people serving in their own community. And so that's why I mean, I'm sure there was racial profiling. Of course, it happens. But for the most part, nobody cared, because I would have black cops that were assholes, and I'd have black cops that were good guys. I'd have white cops that were assholes and white ones that were good guys, but they all knew my last name. So it didn't matter if I was white. It was like, all right, Gillespie boy, I'll beat your ass, and then your dad can come pick you up. And I'm like, oh shit. So in these inner cities, or where we're having all like the police issues, like, I'll say we definitely need some restructuring and law enforcement. Like the whole defund the police thing, it just kind of stole the argument, because um you need well, it's supposed to be unbiased, but you need the uniformed people serving their community, besides like tribal elders with machine guns policing the community, because we've seen where that leads. That's not good. And in Chicago back in the day, the cops were barely there. They would put guns in there to let everybody kill each other, but they barely policed it. And like, you can look up the murder rates in Chicago in the 70s, and it's like, it's insane. We lost more people in Chicago in a week than we did in all the wars on terror. It's like, so policing is good, but you have to have the third party people who care about their community. But it's kind of like, in the Army, we got watered down with all this sensitivity training and silliness. And it's like you said, like, how can you serve your community and police it if most of your training is sitting through like sexual harassment training and all this other like gender studies crap? It's like, how is that going to help you police your community? If I'm a white dude policing a black neighborhood that's full of transgender people, okay, maybe that'll help me. But are they black transgender? It's like, is the training necessary? Like, and why am I policing that area? Like, I don't know, there's a lot of components that we don't get to talk about and see where the problem actually exists, like what the actual problem is. Like I was talking to John about that. Like I said, he's pretty left leaning and we got pretty deep into the policing stuff, and he liked the idea of kind of the social workers doing stuff. And it's like, you know, there's been some videos of social workers trying to do stuff in Berkeley and it doesn't go well, but at the same time, they're not trained for it at all. So what do you do? Arm these people, but then you got to teach them how to shoot. You got to give them range time. But just like the police, you can't give them range time because the chief has to decide: do we go to the range this week and teach them how to use their tasers and weapons, or do we do sensitivity training? Like, it's like in the army, we would do all this sharp training, the anti-rape training, and finally, I got a commander with balls, and we were sitting in the main command talking about this stuff, and he was a captain, so he could get away with this. But he asked the civilian lady telling us all how we're all rapists and everything, and he asked her in front of everybody, like, how many rapes have we had in this command in the last year? Like legit rapes. She was like, none. It's like, okay, how many in the last couple of years? She was like, I think 1 in 5 years. And he's like, then why are we doing this training? Why are we doing a full day of talking about rape and all this when it's not really a big deal? It's like, but Department of Defense thinks we have to do this rape training because people, I mean, it happens, sure, but like, is that really where we should be focusing stuff? So, um, like, I had a buddy that was a cop in California, and he talked about how their police academy was just intense and long probation period. And he was saying he thinks they have the best training in the entire country. Um, but that's like total training time, total training hours, and all the curriculum. But like you said earlier, we're all educated and stuff, but it's not usually the best stuff. So maybe in California they're doing a lot of training, but what are they training on? Is it the right stuff? Like, it's like when you see these videos of a cop confusing their gun for a taser or something, that you can see as a soldier, you can tell 100% that's lack of weapons training. If you reach for the wrong weapon, you know, you're not training enough. That's it comes down to muscle memory. So like in a scenario, to me, if it's life and death, if that's what I'm training for, I'm training to pull a gun. I'm not screwing around with a taser, but yeah, you can just see in a lot of these police videos, there's just lack of training. And then you got the whole in the lack of training, I could play the devil's advocate. In the lack of training, they'll lean on harsh authority. It's like I've seen the Polizei in Germany. I've seen so many times where the German police could just beat somebody's ass. If they were American cops, they would have clubbed somebody to death or shot them. But the German police, for the most part, are very well trained, and they will try to de-escalate situations. The last thing they want to do is shoot people. Like, look up German police shootings. It's extremely rare because they work on de-escalation. And there's violent people out here. There's people that pull knives on cops over here all the time, but they train on how to not get to that point. And so I'm not saying all American cops are just wanting to shoot everybody and stuff, but I don't see a lot of de-escalation training. I see you can see experienced cops, they're really good at it, but it's from their experience. You can see a younger cop that's not that experienced or well trained. They'll go to I'm the authority figure, listen to me. That's what they revert to. And it's like, again, how do we get that out of them? Do we just fire them? Is it their fault? If it's a young recruit, is it their fault or is it our fault because we're training them in the wrong shit? Yeah, you're muted, dude.
All right, are we good?
Yeah.
All right, good. So just think of like the difference of the military and the police. Like in the military, you go through very intense training, even if you're in the Air Force, or the least intensive of them all. You still go through about 8 weeks of intense training where you're isolated. But people that go through that training, it's very rare if they ever have a need for a weapon in their job. So they go through this very intense training for not having a necessity of a weapon. And we are putting people with that authority of having a weapon into less training than people that are not using a weapon. And if we can get people to come on, I mean, if you can go on to a more probationary period where you have to be a civil citizen and not have authority and understand how to de-escalate without authority, I think that would be more of a beneficial type of training, as opposed to giving people authority and letting them just go run around like chickens with their head cut off. It's a bunch of, you know, third graders telling first graders what to do because they're older. It's kind of the same concept. It's people that, one, are scared to lose their authority. They feel that if people don't comply with them, then they have lost their authority, which is not true. That's what reinforcement is. Um, you can add authority with numbers, but you don't have to, you know, definitively show this is the authority. You are going to comply, and if you don't, I'm going to kill you. I mean, that is a, you know, that is something the military uses in war. In war, we're not supposed to engage. We have rules of the engagement, and that's in a war atmosphere. I mean, we have to think about 3 times before we pull a trigger, because we have to know if we're going to be, you know, doing a war crime or not.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say I've seen more discipline from 19-year-old Joes
Yep.
in a war zone
Yep.
than some of our cops.
Yep.
Um, but again, you know, it's funny to see the sides or the sentiments switch because just a couple years ago on the right, you could hear people saying, "Well, just don't break the law, asshole," you know. Um, and that kind of made sense for my generation growing up. Like, try to be a good person. You're gonna deal with assholes. Just try to be good and fight it later. But now again, we're back to a corrupt system. You don't know if you can fight corruption later. But then um I lost my train of thought, but anyway, I
Oh
wanted to
no,
say
you're
this.
good.
Sorry.
But no, you're good. It's because, you know, if it's hard if you grow up in a world where even if you do good, you can get profiled and taken away, and you have no chance of fighting that.
Yeah.
You've been living a good life all the way up to that point, but because you got associated and somebody profiled you, you are now, all of everything that you have earned in your life has been taken away. All your respect, all of your security, everything has been taken from you. Even your relationships, if you're a father or if you're a mother, that's been taken away from you because you've been profiled. Somebody thought you were somebody and took away all of everything that you ever worked for. Now, how are you supposed to be, oh, I'm sorry I did that, I'm supposed to forget that situation? Or are you supposed to be like, okay, well, this is my life now. Now I'm forever going to be profiled as a convict. It's just hard for people that have either that experience, or people that they know that have that experience, that have lived, you know, abiding by every rule and regulation, and still get put into that category just based off of a profile.
Right. Yeah, and so that reminds me, it goes it's cool to see the sides flip-flop. Like it used to be the right. I really hate the racial thing because like I said, there's poor white areas where they're just bumming. You know, Appalachia, trailer parks, like there's entire neighborhoods where it's like a freaking bomb went off here and nobody cares. But it's cool to see the just pure follow the law people, like you said, just be a good person forever. That's that's noble and that's always good. Parents should teach that no matter what. They should teach their kids to be respectful and follow the damn law, be a good person. But it's cool to see, or it's interesting to see now. because it kind of seems like the left owns all the culture. They're gonna own the law soon. They own the judiciary, and more importantly, they own our laws now. So, like with the mask stuff, you would see cops responding to calls of people not wearing masks. And so it was good to see people on the right get pissy about that. And it's like, well, remember when people were having issues with the cops a couple years ago, you were telling them to just follow the law, asshole. Well, now your crappy area, it sucks, but your crappy governor or your mayor said wear a mask. That's your law. So follow the law, asshole. Like, isn't it funny how that works? It's like, so going back to the original argument of the Constitution, if we just followed that, we would be okay. It's like, and like you said, like, uh, do you cannot force your beliefs onto people and force people to live a certain way. So yeah, it's like, which goes back to the Exodus. There was a lot of people that were tired of the mandates and lockdowns, and they saw people in other states having freedom. They were like, I'm going over there. They could have, like, I don't know. It's weird because you can protest all that stuff and try to fight it, but what are your chances of breaking the mandates in California? It's like California's it's heavily conservative by density, but come on, the blue runs that state. That there's no chance. So what are your chances? Like, try to use your First Amendment and fight all that, or just freaking leave? So that's what a lot of people did. But is it good or bad? California's just going to keep going. They're just going to keep doubling down on that. Like, anybody with any sense of patriotism and being American, they're leaving. So who is going to the people who run that state will be worse. The people who stay there, whether it's their choice or not, it's going to get really bad. So I don't know. Not hearing you again.
No, to take the color away, because you take the color away, you take the power away, and make everything purple. I mean, if you can make it to where everybody can acknowledge, like, okay, we're not blue anymore, like that, just by saying that, you don't have to make the statement that you're red now. It's
Yeah.
just not, you're not identified by a color, and you're losing a lot of people because you're identifying with a color.
Yeah. That's why I call them occupied territories and free states now, cuz
Yeah.
there's plenty, like I said, Republicans and their own Karens. Most when let's see, so March 2020, when all this crap started, the majority of American governors were Republicans, and the
Mm-hmm.
majority of the states shut down. So Christy Nome of South Dakota, I'm like, I don't know what DeSantis and you guys did in the beginning. I know there were some silliness, especially in the cities,
I lived in
but in South,
California when it started.
huh?
I
Oh,
lived in
okay.
LA when it started.
Oh, all right. But in South Dakota, like, she was the only Republican governor with balls, and she's a woman, which is funny, that just said, okay, well, I looked at the science, I talked to my experts, we're gonna do this. We're gonna mitigate what we can and do this. Like, all the other governors, whether you think it's right or wrong, um, all these Republican governors, like, they claim to be the constitutionalists and the freedom guys, but they shut down too. So my home state, kids got sent home from schools. There was all these mandates, and I think a lot of the social and healthcare workers, like any state worker, they're trying to force vaccinations on them. So this is a Mississippi's a red state. It's a Republican state, and so that's kind of cool. The purple thing, red and blue makes purple. So yeah, because there's freaking there's corruption on both sides, and there's Karens on both sides, and so yeah.
Military is understanding that they hate everybody. It doesn't matter who you are,
Yeah.
they hate you. So learning that I don't care what side you're on. I hate both sides. I don't care. Like, I am impartial to either side because I think both sides have been totally manipulative and have closed off any type of communication between, the two sides. There is no communication. So if I can delineate from that trajectory and create my own, or our, I apologize for using I, if we can delineate from that trajectory and we can create our own community, it's something that can be based off of what needs to be done properly, as opposed to trying to change what has been done improperly. So the focus would be more internally as opposed to externally. And how can you come up with a solution internally? So what could we be doing to start implementing the foundation of, you know, proper accordance to rights, proper accordance to humanism, or citizenship, or nationalism. We being able to. I mean, the majority of people when we were colonizing America were nationalists. I mean, they were people that we. Oh, I got a little thing going on. It's all right. But these people were nationalists. They were people that were registered to help progress the nation. And it got to a point. I mean, a lot of them were in societies. They had internal, individual societies that were trying to make large macro moves over long periods of time. And that mentality correlated into the policy implementation. So they take that little society's, perspective on long-term progression, and they apply that to the Constitution and what our rights are. So if we can add, or if we can continue to progress, that allows us, one, to feel as if we are less threatened by our surroundings. Pretty much with martial arts, the more uh, capability you have in yourself, the more comfortable you are in your surroundings. So if we can allow our communities to be more capable, they're going to be a lot more comfortable in the situations they get presented throughout time. Um, and I don't know how everybody else sees it, but the way I see it is we've been um, misinformed, miseducated, and the purpose of that was to not allow us to problem solve on our own. It was almost, the correlation between bells in school and bells in prison. There's a certain thing there with conditioning and institutionalization, um, and being able to understand that, okay, well, this may be the structure, but I am free to think as I want. I don't have to think necessarily what's been told to me, because this has been what's been put into a form, a plan, a book. This has been propagated for me. If I want to go seek out knowledge from a different perspective, I am free to do so. It is my right to seek information. It is my right to be able to further expand my knowledge and understanding that I am more capable than what I have been misled to believe. Um, it's something that I think that once we're able to, as a community, um, hold ourselves accountable. I think we don't know how to hold ourselves accountable inside our communities. It's been kind of the layout has been kind of made where if you're in the police, you're never held accountable, or if you're in the government, you're never held accountable.
Yeah.
And if you're in these two, organizations, you never have to worry about being held accountable.
And that's all growing.
Yes.
The in club is growing, whether it's right or left. Well, okay, while you're doing that, I was gonna say the depth of the swamp is what this talk is called, and it's on the Hillsdale College. The Hillsdale College is like the most American uh university in this country. Like they're teaching constitutionalism, and it's a very hard university to get into. It's hardcore, like Hillsdale College. Like if I was going to send my kids to a college in America, I would send them to a trade school, and so they could learn something to do. But if they were going to go to a university, I would send them there. But that's an awesome talk. The guy's name is Adam Andreevsky, but he does the open the books, openthebooks.com or .org, one of those. And it's like, it's insane, man. Cause he goes through, this whole swamp term. It's bad because Trump and them used it. But when I hear like swamp or deep state, I think all the way back to like the Bushes and before, it's like, it's not a right or left thing. And going on that, I like to remind my conservative friends, the the NDAA, which came from the Patriot Act, like the Clinton era, but that was actually implemented after 9/11 by Bush in a three-branch Republican government. So 100% Republican government implemented the freaking Patriot Act. And it was good. We were all scared because of terrorism and 9/11. It was bad times. We were all uniting. But, come on, the NSA came out of that. Like all these ultra powerful agencies, like a lot of the problems we're having today when we talk about being spied on or lack of privacy, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights disappearing, a lot of that goes back to the Patriot Act.
Yeah.
Whether you like Snowden or not, whether you want to say he was illegal or a traitor or not, he still exposed some pretty dirty stuff the NSA is allowed to do, and all these private corporations are allowed to do. And it's like Republicans did that, man. And again, I'm not bashing America and all that because of that. Because I mean, come on, the 9/11 was bad, but it goes back to like the conspiracy stuff. Like all we need is tragedy or something bad, and we'll throw away our rights for. And come on, like our it wasn't just Ben Franklin and them, that it was everybody was talking about this. Like you cannot give up freedom for security. Like that was and it's in the Federalist Papers too, like all over the place. Like security is important, but freedom is, I like to say, importanter. When I'm citing stuff trying to sound smart, I'm like, yeah, it's importanter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Randall, you and I have been talking for a little bit over 2 hours. We've been killing it. So let's start winding it down for the audience. I know you and I can keep going. I mean, I feel like we have the same personality. What's going on in the future that the audience could be looking out for with what you're doing, and kind of what is your positioning for the future in, I don't know, whatever you kind of have going on.
Well, we mentioned the Randall Actual stuff. That's kind of like my for fun political, shenanigans page. I'm probably 50-50 if I'm going to keep that. If I do keep it, I'm probably going to keep it more just for fun and just be more satire. But I'll also have some facts and important stuff in there and just kind of have fun with it, because you got to laugh about all this stuff. You have to laugh. But and I still have the Gruntproof. That's my main thing. It's outdoor gear testing, breaking civilian gear, and a lot of outdoor adventures. I did the survival games. It's like the first ever survival and evasion competition. And so that's pretty much it for me. I'm just going to keep trying to pay attention to the local governance. The president is important, but I think that's one thing I'm optimistic about with this country is people are starting to pay attention to their local elections and the House, like what's going on in the House and Senate. Like that's more important. It's importanter. So, the president, I mean, if we gave all these executive powers to that guy, but he should not have that much power. So, yeah, just I don't know. I'm kind of optimistic. It's weird times in this country, but I'm America's awesome. So, and I've lived outside of America long enough to realize it's freaking awesome. So we'll figure out a way to keep being awesome.
And I can't agree more. from being outside the country and realizing, just what we really have here is just, it's so precious. We have to be careful with it.
Yeah.
We have to we don't break, don't hurt the baby. Take care of it, nurture it. Um, yeah. And do you have another season of that survival games coming out, or you just have the season one?
Yeah. No, season 1 is up, the full season, and then we're working on season 2 now, and that's gonna be shot in November, and the series will probably be released in March of 2023, and it's gonna be, for people that wanna check that out, it's pretty intense. There's a lot of survival shows and like that, but there's not really anything where it's evasion, guys hunting each other and capture and all that, so, the second season, I'm already trying to make it twice as big and twice as hard, like she said. So, well, season 1 was the test phase. Like, what all can we get away with legally and safely? Because it's not Hollywood magic, so it's real stuff going on out there. So now we kind of nailed it down to what we can get away with. So season 2, we're gonna bring it. We're gonna hit these guys.
I can't wait to see the bigger and better version because the first one was just so. You have to check out the survival games on Gruntproof Outdoors channel. What other handles can the audience see you on? What are your other social media tags?
That's pretty much it. Grunt proof. It's just grunt proof, no hyphen, all across the
Yep.
board on all the channels, all the social medias, and then if they're interested in the other stuff, the Freedom America stuff, it's just Randall Actual, and yeah, it's the same all across the board. It's all pretty simple.
Okay, so it's easy to find you,
Oh yeah, you look for this stupid face, and
and you'll find it.
yeah,
So, well, Randall, thank you so much for giving us your time and your knowledge and perspective. I really, I'm very appreciative of having that ideology and the ability to communicate kind of what your perspectives have been and what we need to start paying attention to as a nation, because I don't see this as just communities. It starts with communities, but eventually communities create a nation.
yeah. No, I,
So,
I appreciate it, man. It was a blast, and
man,
you're doing cool stuff. I like it. So
well, yeah, I appreciate your support, and if we can ever get you on again, I'm all game for that. So I would love to incorporate you into the conversation as much as I can because I love your perspective.
yeah, anytime, man. If yeah, I hate to be biased, but I'll do anything for fellow vets. So it's
Yeah.
cool to see. So it's always cool to see veterans out there getting at it. So
Hey, if nobody's gonna do it, we're gonna do it because we're leading from the front.
we should be doing it a lot more.
You're right. Well, hopefully we can start, working on progress. That's the goal for at least this platform on our side is to just, you know, be the light and kind of help facilitate change. So you can only do that with communication, and that's all we want to do is create that platform of unbiased communication. Um, so, all right, we gotta start winding this up. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. We're going to be doing multiple lives. Obviously, this one didn't go as cleanly and smoothly as we would liked, but we're giving it to you live. We're giving it the raw content, so you can take with it as you need. But please start checking out more that we do. We are continuously growing. We are continuously reaching more and more veterans and helping bridging the gap between the military community and the civilian community. So thanks so much for tuning in, and please look out for the future because we're going to be coming out. Thanks so much. Take care.